Hello and welcome. Don't ever say that we don't read your comments, because we are back today with another highly requested vehicle. This time, the Hongqi H9. Ever since this thing debuted late last year, it has been the source of fervent internet debate. Some people say that it looks like a blatant copy of a Rolls-Royce. Others say it looks like a blatant copy of a BMW. And still others think it's just a pretty good-looking sedan. Everybody has an opinion, but today we're going to try and answer a much more basic question. Is it any good? Let's find out. If we're going to talk about the exterior design on this car, we have to start by addressing the elephant in the room. Ever since this thing debuted, everybody and their mother has been commenting about how it looks like this car or that car. And to those people, I say, you're right. You're absolutely right. It looks like a mashup between a Rolls-Royce Ghost and a BMW 7 Series. That can be explained in part, at least, by the fact that back in 2018, Hongqi hired none other than Giles Taylor, former head of design for Rolls-Royce and one of the people behind the modern design language for the brand. The thing is, design and development for this vehicle started in 2017, and credit for this design goes to a Chinese designer that works for Hongqi. So, while I think that Giles Taylor probably had some input on it, it's safe to say that Hongqi always planned on evoking the Rolls-Royce style.
Regardless of its origin story, I have to say that I really like the look of the H9. For all of its similarities to other designs, it has some unique and interesting details. Take for example the beautiful chrome strip that flows down from each headlight and meets below the grille. I also love the distinctive strip of chrome and red lighting that starts in the middle of the grille and extends into the hood. Sure, it's more than a bit kitschy, but it's a fine alternative to a traditional badge.
The side profile of the H9 is also quite fetching, starting with this beautiful long hood and working its way down to a gentle slope here on the rear. Speaking of the rear, I have a feeling it's going to be the source of some controversy. I think it looks like a Cadillac CT5, and I think it looks pretty good, but it will probably have its detractors. Speaking of which, let's talk about this awesome two-tone gold and purple paint job. As I just said, I really like it. I think it looks pretty cool, and it's obviously supposed to elicit thoughts of Mercedes-Benz S-Classes. However, some of you may disagree. On a more practical note, rear trunk space on the H9 measures about 370 liters. That's a far cry from the 510 liters you would find in a Mercedes-Benz S-Class, despite the very similar wheelbase and length. The inside of the H9 is lathered in leather, chrome, and what I think is the strangest accent material I've ever seen on the inside of a car. The pattern lies somewhere between wood, marble, and a peppermint stick. Still, I like it more than piano black plastic, which is also very prevalent, like here on the dashboard and here on the center console. Overall, it reminds me a lot of something like a Mercedes-Benz E-Class, which I don't mind, because I like the integrated look of the screens in this one, as opposed to the stuck on the dashboard tablet look that's more and more common in cars today. A couple of small details that I want to point out. This is a private owner car, and he's decided that he's going to put some kind of plastic film all over the interior parts here to protect the piano black material. Not a great look in my opinion. The other problem is not the owner's fault. This is from the factory. There are a few places where the craftsmanship, the finishing I should say, is not quite up to what I consider a good standard. The materials, for example, here on the dash could be a little bit softer, but overall these are small nitpicks.
The similarities to Mercedes-Benz only serve to draw attention to the fact that interior material quality is only passable. I do like the red strip running down the dashboard, which continues on the center armrest. The result is what I would consider a pretty cohesive design. But most H9 owners will be spending more time in the back seat, theoretically at least. So let's see what that's all about.
First, let's talk about what you don't get. This is a mid-spec version, which means that it lacks the refrigerator, infotainment screens in the backrests, and the massaging seats that you would get in the higher spec version. What you do get are 2 USB ports, AC controls here, and then also some adjustability for the seats, including lean, the headrests, and the passenger seat up here as well. This mid-spec version does have a lot of blanks here on this center armrest, which isn't particularly good looking. Oh, the other thing you get is tons of legroom, but you would expect that in a car that measures 5 meters in length.
The H9 uses a rear-wheel drive platform and comes in your choice of 2 engine options, both of which operate through a 7-speed DCT. The first is a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, making 252 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque. But the truly power-hungry can step up to the 3-liter supercharged V6, which makes 280 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. Neither of those is especially impressive, but the power figures of the 4-cylinder engine are similar to those of the base 4-cylinder BMW 7 Series that's available here in China. But its starting price of $45,000 is a little over 1/3 of the BMWs.
So it's a third of the price, but does that mean that it offers a third of the performance and comfort as well? Well, let's talk about performance first. The 0 to 100 km/h time in this 2-liter version is about 7.3 seconds. The 0 to 100 km/h time in the 4-cylinder 7 Series is something around 6 seconds. So a big difference, but not that big. Before you ask, I have driven the 3-liter supercharged version, the V6, and while it is noticeably quicker, it's still not a performance vehicle. I would estimate that the 0 to 100 km/h time is somewhere in the 6.5 second range. The transmission, the 7-speed DCT, very, very smooth, especially at speed. Shifts are imperceptible, almost. The only problem is when you're taking off from a dead stop. There's a considerable lag between when you put your foot down and when you start to actually move. I thought this might be the turbo engine's fault, but then I remembered that it was also present in the supercharged version that I drove earlier. So that's going to be the transmission's fault for sure. So how about comfort? Well, I gotta say, this is an incredibly comfortable vehicle. Certainly one of the most comfortable Chinese cars I've ever driven. Now, the comfort does come at a bit of a cost when it comes to performance, and we'll go back to that. I'd like to compare this to the Cadillac CT6. In reality, it's probably a better benchmark than a 7 Series or an A8 because its price here in China is almost exactly the same. So I drove a Cadillac CT6 last year, and one of the things I really liked about it was the playfulness of the chassis. Don't get me wrong, this is a huge sedan, so it's not as though it was tossable, but it certainly was more playful than this H9. Instead of the playfulness of the CT6, you have seriousness in the H9. This is a car that says to you, I'm about cruising, nothing else. Don't try and drive me like a performance car, that would be a bad idea. And it's right. There's nothing but understeer when you really push it, and the steering, no feeling at all. It's incredibly, incredibly numb. Makes it easy to maneuver, but it doesn't exactly egg you on to drive it aggressively.
Still, the lack of athleticism doesn't diverge from the basic character of the car. This thing is supposed to be about cruising comfort. It has no pretensions of performance, so I don't think it will be a problem for most potential buyers.
Presence is a term that I think is often misapplied to vehicles that are simply huge. To me, it refers to something that commands a certain level of attention and respect as it moves down the road. Examples include the Mercedes-Benz S-Class, Cadillacs of the 60s and 70s, and yes, pretty much anything from Rolls-Royce. Love it or hate it, the H9 has presence, and that is a feat in and of itself. Does it borrow from other brands in order to make that happen? Oh yeah, it absolutely does. And I personally would have preferred that they blazed a completely new path in terms of the design. But at the end of the day, I think it has enough unique design features and elements to stand on its own. All right, that's going to be all for today. Thanks for watching.